Hey you! It's me, V, one of the editors of this channel, and I'm back at it again because, holy cow, you guys really like me. Thank you. Look, I know I said I wouldn't return to Animaniacs 2020, but this is different. This month's Patreon raffle winner is How to Fix Animaniacs 2020, courtesy of Fox King. For more information on Patreon perks, wait until the end of the video. As you know, one of the things that pains me the most about Animaniacs 2020 is that it had so much untapped potential and really could have been a worthy revival. My mind worked like a supercomputer in finding ways Animaniacs 2020 could have been the next DuckTales 2017. And I know I covered a lot of ground in the many mistakes of Animaniacs 2020, so as I focus more on fixing instead of pointing out flaws, I'll do my best not to be repetitive of points I brought up there. Without further ado, sit back, relax, and laugh till you collapse as your friendly neighborhood Fanimaniac takes you through an unofficial How I Would Have Made It video on Animaniacs 2020. I should start with the obvious, that being the crew. As you know, Tom Ruegger was not invited back to work on the show. I think the best thing you could do is bring him back as, at the very least, a creative consultant. He has some pretty good ideas on what direction an Animaniacs revival should be headed towards, and his presence can help the staff not lose sight of what makes Animaniacs, well, Animaniacs. Inviting some of the original writers back would also be nice, like Sherry Stoner and Paul Rudd. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say it has to be solely the old crew working on the show again. New writers can help keep things fresh, especially if they're Animaniacs fans such as yours truly. After all, the people behind DuckTales 2017 were fans of the original show, and you could feel the passion and love poured into that thing. And just as important are the characters. You can't just bring back Yakko, Wacko, Dot, Pinky, and Brain while tossing everybody else to the wayside. Slappy Squirrel is definitely one of my top choices. She's similar to the Warners in paying homage to old cartoons, but she has a special flavor to her being, you know, old and retired, but also a cool aunt. Seriously, Skippy hit the jackpot. He has no idea how lucky he is. Although with bringing back Slappy Squirrel, I think I'd change the plot just a little bit. What if Skippy is now a child toon star on the rise, and Slappy is not only his mentor, but also his agent? We could see more of the toon acting industry itself. And Skippy following in his aunt's footsteps shows us how far he's come since the original show. I would also definitely bring back the Goodfeathers. The reason they weren't brought back for Animaniacs 2020 was because them parodying the Goodfellas was outdated, but they easily could have found more Mafia content to lampoon, like The Sopranos. Buttons and Mindy would make a nice comeback too, but on one condition. Buttons has to win at the end of every cartoon. Otherwise, it's not fun watching Buttons put himself in danger to protect Mindy and get punished for it time and time again. And this might sound controversial, but I don't want Rita and Runt to come back.
What?
And I don't mean Rita and Runt the characters, I mean Rita and Runt the skit. Because at the end of Wacko's Wish, they get adopted by Scratch and Sniff and finally find a home. I would love to see that carry over in a hypothetical Animaniacs revival. They could either be incorporated as regulars in the Warner skits, or they could have their own separate skit with Dr. Scratch and Sniff and we'd follow them being therapy pets. It'd be nice to see Minerva Mink return too. I enjoyed her 2 episodes and how the comics handled her, so why not take a page out of the latter? Instead of her skits turning out to be another Chicken Boo or Katie Kaboom, they could show more ways of Minerva dealing with her beauty. While she loves using her body to get what she wants, it sometimes gets out of control, like that issue where she wants someone to do her taxes but he can't stop ogling over her. They could even use the rare scenario of her not wanting a man at all, like that one time she shoves away the hot mink she typically drools over for a bottle of perfume. It'd also be funny to see her desperately try to use her looks to win over the object of her affections, but to no avail. That brings us to the recurring characters. Tom Ruegger had this really good idea of Hello Nurse becoming the CEO as plot steps down. It feels like a natural change because Hello Nurse always wanted to be known for her intelligence, not for her looks. Not only would this be a natural progression of her character, but it would also put a nice spin on the Hello Nurse gag. Instead of Hello Nurse, it would be Hello CEO. As for my own input, I would love to see Farfig Newton be something of a third member for Pinky and the Brain. By that I mean she'd be their transportation and their getaway. This would make her play a crucial role without throwing off Pinky and the Brain's dynamic. And it carries over from the ending of Wacko's Wish quite nicely. Now for this one, I'll admit I'm a little bit biased, but I'd have Squid and Sasha break up because their relationship is clearly unhealthy. This would give him an opportunity to reunite with Carluta, the sparrow that he was in love with in West Side Pigeons. I always thought they made a cute couple. They deserve to get back together. I also want to see Wilford make a comeback. If you've seen our Minerva Mink video, you know I like this guy. He's got so much untapped potential. With him basically being a gender-bent counterpart to Minerva once a month, I could see the two being partners in crime. For example, let's say Minerva wanted to get a really expensive pair of shoes or a purse, and she uses her beauty to charm all of the male employees at the mall to give her a discount, but then there are female employees who try to stop this, only for Wilford to step in and save the day. It really can be that simple, just as long as they use him. But enough about the characters we know and love. What about new skits? I think an Animaniacs revival could greatly benefit from this. After all, I do have a soft spot for the Incredible Gnome in people's mouths, even if my disdain for Animaniacs 2020 has been made clear time and time again. But not Starbucks and Cindy, they are way too similar to Pinky, Elmira, and the Brain. Maybe we could have a skit that pays homage to silent cartoons, or the Betty Boop type, but the name would have to be way less on the nose compared to the original's Googly Goop. Though one of my favorite ideas for a new skit would have to be making a video game hero. Think OKKO, but it's an antivirus soldier fighting bugs with rubber hosey slapstick. That's basically my OC Loca, but de-Warnerfied and without her insecurity issues. It would also be really cool to see skits that never made it into the original be part of the revival, like Nipsey and Russell, two raccoons who speak in rhyme, or Latija, who nobody remembers what she was supposed to be, but she looks cool, so try to fit her in somewhere. Now, you're probably thinking, this is nice for a total revamping of an Animaniacs revival, but what about what Animaniacs 2020 came up with? What if I had to stick with their new ideas and removals, making a more traditional fix instead of replacing the content outright? Well, lucky for you, I've accounted for this situation too. Let's go over the new characters first, starting with Nora Norita, the new CEO of Warner Brothers. As is, she's no nonsense with an unhinged side, but it's either not explored very often, or she's too powerful for the Warners to thwart or flat out interact with. As you've seen in my Bun Control rewrite, I wanted to make Nora more bantery and tolerant of the Warners' chaos. She has that no-nonsense front to keep her reputation clean, but in reality, she likes how the puppy children always keep things interesting around the lot, and behaves more like a cool aunt for them. Almost like a Slappy and Skippy dynamic, but with enough of a spin to prevent them from becoming a full-on knockoff or replacement. Next, we have Nils Neidhart. I think he's still welcome. He's goofy but not self-aware, working great as a middle ground between crazier enemies like Baloney the dinosaur and more straight-man jerks like Ivan Blowski. However, in order to make him work, you can't be hypocritical. Minerva Mink wasn't brought back for being too sexy, and Hello Nurse got cut not just for that reason, but also because her scenes were mistaken for making light of sexual harassment. I guess the muscles can stay since Nora is still quite busty, but having him wear nothing but a Speedo with the clear intent of sex appeal gives off the message that it's only okay to objectify men, but in reality, it's all or nothing. Animaniacs 1993 stood by this principle, and so should the revival. Finally, we have Julia. She's a good character, but her introduction puts Brain in a way too negative light. While Brain can be rather harsh sometimes, he ultimately had morals and lines he'd never cross. Instead of being a victim of mental assault from Brain, she should have been a villain from the start. It would have been better if after Brain genetically created her, Julia's beliefs ended up aligning more with the wrong crowd, and she used her more positively received public image to sabotage Brain's plans and subtly brainwash the nation into supporting child slavery. Then he exposes her desire for their tiny hands to intricately craft bombs. Thanks to Pinky and the Brain's interference, she loses the election and becomes the new Snowball, a recurring villain instead of only appearing once per season. And for a more general change, the Warners' villains need to have their power toned down. The Warners may not be fully invincible, but they also shouldn't be absolutely powerless wimpy losers until the very end of their episodes. Otherwise, they're not actually Animani totally insaney. Now this is the part where we talk about the characters that were written off. Good Warner hunting having them killed and mounted on the wall by a jealous chicken Boo, which I forgot to point out, but his human disguise here is completely different from what his routine truly is about, is the higher-ups' shameless expression of disdain they had for Animaniacs 1993. If we were forced to work with these limitations, we have to handle them gracefully. Don't say they're gone because they're dead, but not really. You could instead use the excuse of time has changed. Obviously, it's time for Hello Nurse to leave and do bigger and better things, but in her absence, you could replace her with a family member, maybe a niece. Heloise Nurse is out, Helena Nurse is in. Skippy could be busy living his dream of being a true cartoon character while Slappy is at the retirement home with Vina. Mindy is all grown up, so she no longer needs Buttons to look after her. The Goodfeathers have finally reached god pigeon status and are successfully running a pigeon mafia. And Minerva ran off to a private island with Wilford and never returned. It would still be sad to see them go, but this type of send-off would handle it respectfully. This next set of ideas is episode-centric, and unless specified can go both ways in fitting either my complete retooling or working with what Animaniacs 2020 already gave us. So for one, I would say put a little more emphasis on crossover skits, whether it be All Hands on Deck or an Animaniacs Stew sequel. While not really happening too often in the original, crossover skits were what made the characters truly connected under one umbrella. All these wacky concepts could have been their own shows, or at least try to get off the ground as well as the Pinky and the Brain spinoff did. But here they are, working off each other and proving how special variety sketch shows can be. And the fact that many of these pair-ups work so well is why Animaniacs Stew is one of the most beloved episodes of the original. There's still so much potential that you could cover here. I can see it now. Hello Nurse and Minerva Mink's friendship being expanded upon, Slappy actually whacking the Goodfeathers with her purse, and the Warners not only babysitting Mindy while Buttons takes a sick day, but also teaching her how to harness the trouble her curiosity brings. I would also suggest looking at more pop culture relics for inspiration. This is my obvious bias speaking here, but I would have loved to see a parody sketch of Undertale. And not just any parody sketch. A full 30-minute one, just like Star Warners. And although I don't like Jokahontas, they could pull a just the same old heroine for Disney's trend of twist villains or its replacement, generational trauma. Also, Tom had this wonderful idea of the Warners running the internet from the tower after their show got canceled. Knowing internet humor and how random and senseless our general senses of humor have become, this is right up their alley. A goldmine of opportunities to run with should you take the chance. That's what I wish we could have gotten from Please Submit. Imagine this. Instead of the Warners running away from spam emails in fear and getting their butts handed to them, the plot kicks off when a Spampton type of character kidnaps Miss Security, the Warners' social security number. They jump inside the computer and travel the World Wide Web to save her, facing off against other big shots and discovering the many personified internet programs worship them like gods.
They think I'm God. Yes!
With all this internet talk, though, there's something I should address. While I do prefer the vlogging and internet stuff to be covered by the Warners, it doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive to the Warners. I just don't think it's good for Pinky and the Brain. If you want an internet type of lampoon that doesn't involve the Warners, let me provide you a couple of examples. Exhibit A, the Hip Hippos. There are so many YouTubers and TikTokers out there flexing their houses and doing a rich boy check. Flavio and Marita are the perfect vessels to make fun of them. Exhibit B, Minerva Mink. This isn't my idea, but rather a comment that I found on the Minerva Mink video from Blake Wood. It reads, I think it would have been funny if they brought her back for the reboot and made her a Twitch streamer. That would be modern and still completely relevant to her character. A lot of comedic opportunities to be had as well. And if you wanted to make it wholesome, at the end show that she's one of those streamers that actually has a boyfriend and it's Wilford. It's explained so perfectly that I don't really know what else to add. Except for one thing. Imagine in the end when Minerva brings out Wilford to prove to the chat that she indeed has a boyfriend. He gets a lot of nasty comments because they think she's too hot for him. though he also receives a small handful of "he's actually kinda cute," since nowadays Velma is seen as more attractive than Daphne. But then, to completely humiliate the haters, Minerva has perfectly timed Wilfred's appearance with the rising moon, causing him to go werewolf mode, and everybody goes wild over this revelation. I swear, so many doors were closed when it was decided that Animaniacs 2020 would only bring back the Warners and Pinky and the Brain. Oh, that's another thing. I won't go too much into detail with how the Warners went through heavy character derailment, since I already went into enough detail with the many mistakes of Animaniacs 2020. But one thing I didn't talk about too much was their sibling bond, which is one of the highlights within the fandom, to the point where there's a buttload of Animaniacs fanfics focusing on the Warners' relationship, and for good reason. Animaniacs 2020 fumbled the bag here in a way that not many seem to notice. While Fear and Laughter in Burbank can be summed up as a twisted, bizarro "take my siblings please" retelling, the scene in the end where Wacko and Dot save Yakko from Nickelwise exemplifies a strong lack of subtlety. You'd think that with the Warners themselves being in your face with the joke per minute style, subtlety isn't important. But in fact, it's crucial to moments that highlight their strong relationship. If you want to have episodes focused more on that, obviously don't lose the comedy elements like the aforementioned example. Take note of 1993's Meatballs or Consequences, which has Yakko and Dot wisecracking in the face of death as they bargain for their brother's life back. But if you want to have one really good sibling moment in a still lighthearted romp, look no further than Temporary Insanity, which has one scene I could gush about forever. To refresh whatever memory you may or may not have, Plots accidentally calls the Warners to fill in for a sick temp. Yakko is the one who finally pushes him to his breaking point, making his face turn red like a tomato and screaming so loudly the camera outside shakes. He menacingly approaches Yakko, looking like he's gonna strangle the boy.
Hey, take it easy, Thad.
Wacko and Dot quickly enter the room to check on Yakko, catching him as he falls back. The kids are concerned, but the looks on their faces don't convey absolute terror the way Animaniacs 2020 tends to do so. Also helping is that it doesn't showcase a relatively heavy topic like how Fear and Laughter's scene kicks off with Yakko's insecurities about not being funny. Add a little tension, but not mood whiplash. After Yakko confirms it was Plots who screamed, the Potato Head Man towers over them.
Get out of my life!
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. That's our money shot. Wacko and Dot protectively wrap their arms around their older brother while he grabs their shoulders. It lasts for only half a second, barely enough to process without making you feel your head got smashed by an anvil. Yet it says so much. The phone rings, and just like that, it snaps right back to the funny haha shenanigans. This is how you convey the strong bond between the Toon Trio without turning the episode into a serious, dramatic, deep inspection of anxieties within a character who isn't built to have them. Moments like these should be small, or relatively small in Wacko's Wishes case, because the sibling bond itself is a little thing that goes a long way. And while we're on the subject of little things, bring back the tower gags and make the credits more interesting than just two still images of the lot, please and thank you. And to cap off this discussion, I'd like to share some episode ideas of my own. Most of these are fanfic ideas I've wanted to write, but never got around to. Maybe someday they'll see the light of day, but for now, all you'll get are premises. Though one in particular is a retooling of one of Tom's concepts. We'll get there when we get there. So first, 2 Halloween-themed episodes. The first one is The Nightmare Fun Fair, which centers around the Warners sneaking into a carnival after dark and enjoying having the place all to themselves, but are abducted one by a mysterious phantom-like foe and must escape their clutches. My original plan was for the reveal to be Chicken Boo, but Animaniacs 2020 beat me to that ending in Good Warner Hunting. They also beat me to the Warners go inside a Smash Bros. Parody game and duke it out idea, but I had that saved for my in-progress Warner Tale literary universe, and I'm not scrapping that story anytime soon. Anyway, the other is Monster Mashed, where the Warners go inside a haunted house, and it turns out that they're trespassing onto a witch's property, so she turns them into monsters. Yakko is a zombie, Wacko is a werewolf, and Dot is a witch. Now, using their new abilities to enhance the zaniness, they have until midnight to thwart the witch's army and remove the curse, or else they'll be monsters forever. Dot's the only one who wholeheartedly enjoys her new powers. Yakko hates how sluggish he's forced to be, but discovers his bite can temporarily result in mind control, and Wacko is somewhere in the middle. Another idea I have is for a parody of a band biopic. The Warners start a successful rock band together, but eventually end up getting along horribly as bandmates. Things come between them and they split off. But we see it doesn't affect their sibling relationship, as at the end of the day, they act like nothing ever happened. Kind of like how in Looney Tunes, Sam Sheepdog and Ralph Wolf antagonize each other at work, but then go off to hang out as friends when their shifts end. When the kids pursue solo careers, though, they soon miss performing and making music together, so the band reunites. Maybe they argue again afterwards to remind you things aren't supposed to get too sentimental, like the ending to I'm Mad. Now don't get me wrong, the Warners may be my primary muse, but they're not the only characters I can write for. Case in point, this Hello Nurse-based idea. What if we got to meet the rest of the Nurse family? Heloise is the one we know, Helena is her niece, and all of the other members have HE names. But put your pitchforks down. I came up with this idea before Season 2 did it with Nora and the Noritas. Look, I have receipts. Plus, I was thinking just the nurses instead of the Warners meeting them. The format could be a reality TV or mockumentary kind of deal. And finally, there's Tom Ruger's idea of Slappy desperately trying to get an adult Skippy to move out. I don't like it as a permanent dynamic, but I could see it working for a singular episode. Picture this. Grown-up Skippy is a washed-up Toon star still living in Slappy's basement. She desperately wants him to move out, but nothing she does works. It only gets more and more insane until Slappy wakes up and realizes it was just a nightmare. Skippy comes in and asks her if she's okay, prompting her to hug him and make him promise to never grow up. So, there you have it. These are the different ways I'd fix Animaniacs 2020. Whether it be starting completely from scratch or retooling what was already given, there's always a way to find the potential within mediocrity or the downright spiteful and turn it into gold. It's proof that it could have been great. A worthy love letter to the best cartoon of all time. But as it stands, Animaniacs 2020 will forever be one of my go-to examples of how not to write a reboot, revival, or show in general. I hope my advice is able to provide insight on how to avoid that fate. Well, that's all for now. How do you think Animaniacs 2020 could have been fixed? Comment below, because we all like reading your points of view. And it's that time again. It's time for our Patreon roll call. Thank you, Masters of Fate, Manny Paredes, Kev, Leafstorm, Ryan Williams, Channel 11, and Woody Woo. And thank you, executive producers, Unkale, Blackjack, Edward Haas, H.R. Hoffman, Who Else But Zane, YouTube Milkwad, Albert Robinson, I Am Fove, Aaron Vasquez, Ravioli Supremo, Wes Franklin, and Indiscreet One. If you too would like your name read at the end of every Media Mementos video, as well as a chance to win our monthly raffle, then consider donating to our Patreon, link in the description below. And if you want to hear me talk more often, feel free to pay a visit to my main channel. But for now, I must retreat behind the scenes once more. Thanks for letting me take the floor again, Trevor. Until next time, this is V, putting the V in lovely lively V, and signing off. Good night, everybody!